Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is sponsored by Edward Sofer, dedicated in loving memory of his parents, Ray and David Sofer, Mishpatim David ben Moshe ben Naima, and Simcha bat Chana. As well, Breakfast in the Class is dedicated to Nishmat, Abraham ben Yecheskel v'Zolecha, sponsored by his son, Maurice Chosh. Also, dedicated in loving memory of Mrs. Lily Safer Nishmat, Leah bat Chana, whose philanthropy has reached so many throughout the entire world. And sponsored by Edward Sofer, dedicated for speedy and complete for Shlema, for Eliyahu Shimon ben Mazal Fortuna and Chana bat Sima Fega. Please make a berachot for their speedy refuah Shlema. And last but not least, the week of Kobru is dedicated and sponsored by David Yash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do good today and every day. My friends, in our parasha this week, we have three epic words that are words to live by, words that are very important. The pasuk says, midvar sheker tirhak. From a word of sheker, from a word of falsehood, tirhak, you should stay far away. Now it's interesting. Normally, the way it works with mitzvot is the Torah tells you what to do or what not to do. And as we know in the Mishnah, in Masechet Avot, the Mishnah says, asu sayag la Torah. What does that mean? Make a sayag la Torah? Make a fence. What does that mean, make a fence for the Torah? What does that mean? It means if the Torah told you, don't do this, the Chachamim went and they built a fence around it. They said, don't even do this. Because if you do this, then you might do this. So we always built in extra distance around the mitzvot, around the averot, to ensure that we never made mistakes, that we never came close to transgressing the averot themselves. So the distance from the mitzvah is that mideoraita or midrabanan, that comes from the Chachamim. Say the Chachamim with one exception. One thing in the Torah that we find has built in its own geder. It doesn't say lo tishakeru. It says midvar sheker tirchak. So it builds in the richuk. So it doesn't say don't lie and say this building costs this product costs this service is going to cost me X. The guy's a great guy, you should do business with him. All these things where you're actually lying. The Torah says, don't even say, I think the guy's a pretty good guy. I think it's a pretty good deal. Even that is, it's not the lie itself, but it's not far enough away. The Torah is asking of a person to remain so far in the white that they don't cross they don't cross that black line, if you will, into the world of sheker, of falsehood. Now, why is it that it's so important that we stay that far away, that we built in to this mitzvah only the concept of distance, of being careful to always be completely true? There's a beautiful line from Rav Zusha. Rav Zusha used to read this pasuk maybe in a little bit of a different way. He said, midvar sheker tirchak doesn't mean stay far away from lying. He says, midvar sheker tirhak. If a person speaks falsehood, tirhak, they will find themselves distant. It will create a barrier, a space between them and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our rabbis tell us that the seal of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chotamo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, emet. The seal of God is truth. And if a person lies, who tells things, who says things that are not true, then Borei Olam can't be with that person. And he finds, so to speak, himself pushed further and further and further away from God. And he brings something that is mind-blowing. He quotes the pasuk where the pasuk says that God came to Avraham, and told Avraham that he's going to have a baby. Anyway, Sarah hears, v'hi shomat petach ha'oel. She hears at the entrance to the tent. V'titzchak Sarah b'kirba, and Sarah in her heart, she laughed. How am I going to have a baby? My husband is old, I'm old, I can't give birth, I no longer have the capacity to be able to bear children. How's that? Anyway, God says to Avraham, why did Sarah lie? Avraham now comes to Sarah and says, Sarah, why did Sarah laugh? Avraham comes to Sarah and says, why did you laugh? And what does Sarah say? I did not laugh. I did not laugh. Says the pasuk, ki yareya because she was afraid. She said something that was not true. Now, we explained back then when we learned that parasha together, we explained what was the reason why Sarah left, why was God calling her out, how come all of this happened in this way. We gave a very deep explanation. But Rav Zusha says something piercing. Look at what happens right after that conversation. She says, I didn't laugh. Ki yarea. Abraham says, no, but you did laugh. The next pasuk says, Vayakumu misham anashim. The people, the guests that had come to visit them, stood up to leave. Who were those people that came to visit Abraham? As we know, they were malachim, they were angels. But the minute that Sarah had said something that had an element of untruth to it, the malachim could no longer stay there. They had to get up and go. And if that's true about the malachim who represent HaKadosh Baruch Hu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's power, how much more so is that true about God Himself, about who we say Chotamo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emet. What a wild concept. Our rabbis tell us that this concept, this idea, is something that a person needs to pay very close attention to. And I was thinking about that this morning when I was thinking about how to present this to you. You know, so often a person is praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they're crying, and they're praying so deeply and so passionately to God for something that they really need. And they find that their prayers are not answered. And sometimes the answer is to pray more, or to pray harder, right? Sometimes the answer is to give more tzedakah. Sometimes there might be a lot of different things that a person will find themselves doing, trying to sway HaKadosh Baruch Hu's decision in terms of the outcome of the situation that they would like. But think about that. You know, I don't know if you ever had this before. You know, growing up, yeah, especially this is something, you know, you had the kid in the third floor of the house, you know. Ma! She's like, what? I can't find my shoes. I can't hear you. I can't find my shoes. What's the mother say? I can't hear you. If you want something, come downstairs. Talk to me like a mensch. Stop screaming from the third floor. I don't know what you're saying. I don't like getting yelled at. Right? She asked the child to come downstairs so she could hear him. And I was thinking, maybe we are that child on the third floor, screaming about what we want. And when we don't get it, what do? We scream louder. But the problem is we're so far away that screaming louder doesn't help, doesn't make it clearer. So what's the answer? The answer is to go downstairs, to go closer to your parent, and talk like a mensch. Sometimes the problem is not our prayers, it's not our zichuyot, it's that we've created a gulf, a space, so big because midvar sheker tirchak. Now you have a person every once in a while that tells a lie. You have a person who's a little bit less careful. You have people who are pathological liars. They lie all the time. They lie for no reason. I remember once meeting someone who was telling us about the fact that her father passed away. A little while later, I'm walking down the street and I see the girls walking with this older man. I said, oh, hello, how you doing? What's your name? The guy says his name. I was like, Shema Yisrael, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mechayeh Metim. So Dad, and I'm just looking at this girl and I'm like, it wasn't like she was trying to collect tzedakah from me. It wasn't like I was, running a program only for people who don't have parents, that she needed to lie to get on it. Zero reason. That's a pathological liar, a person who unfortunately is mentally unwell. They need help. They're lying for no reason. My friends, sometimes there's an element of pathological liar in us as well. People posting things online, misrepresenting themselves for no good reason. Pretending that their life looks one way when it doesn't look that way. That is a pathological liar. The Gemara tells us an unbelievable story in Masechet Sanhedrin. There was a rabbi who had a very interesting wife. Okay? The rabbi's name was Rav. Whatever Rav asked his wife for, his wife would give him The opposite. She biflij. You know what I always thought when I read this Gemara? Rav asks for, the Gemara says, he asked for beans, she gave adashim, she gave him fool. He asked for fool, she made him adashim. This is his wife. Whatever he asks for, she gives him the opposite. I finally realized what the real pshat in the pasuk is. E'eselo ezer kinegdo. They make him a helper opposite him. Whatever he says, opposite. She's going to help him by giving him the opposite of what he wants. Anyway, you can imagine how frustrating it is, but the Rav is a big rabbi. He's a big boy, he can handle it. He'll have the other thing, okay, whatever it is. Anyway, one day, he asks his son, the great Rav Hia, he asks his son for some adashim. Please, could you go ask Ma? I need to eat some lunch. Could she prepare some of these beans? He goes to his mother, knowing exactly who his mother is, and he says, Dad wants the other thing. Anyway, he comes into the room, brings Rav for the first time exactly what he asked for. And Rav says, wow, I can't believe it. You asked Mom for adashim and she made you adashim. I guess maybe I'm doing a good job. Maybe things have turned around. Maybe Mom's taking care of me. Maybe Mom likes me now. Rav Chia says, no. But, I told her that you wanted the other thing. So she made you this. Rav says to his son, he says, no. Yeah. Person should never do this. Because it says in the pasuk, limdu lishonam daber sheker. They taught their tongues to speak words of falsehood. Now, even though you're allowed, in order to have shalom, a person's allowed to change the truth a little bit for the sake of shalom. Mishanim ipnei shalom, says the say Chazal. In fact, who do we learn it from? From God Himself. When God told Avram about Sarah's laughing, what did He say? She said, I can't believe that I'm going to have a baby. I'm old. What did Sarah say? Sarah said, I can't believe we're going to have a baby because my husband is old and I'm old. But God, by law, so to speak, didn't tell the truth by omission. He didn't say exactly what Sarah said. Why? Mipnei shalom. Right? So if that's the case, mipnei shalom, right? You're allowed to be mishaneh. So what was Rav telling his son, Rav Chia? He wants the husband and his mother and father to get along. So he says adashim instead of full instead of adashim. Who cares? Said Rav to his son, no, limdu lishonam daber sheker. When you lie about unimportant things, when you're not careful with your tongue about beans or fool, then you know what happens? You teach yourself that emet is not something that is inviolate. And then when it comes to really important, life-changing things, you won't say the emet. I get phone calls sometimes for shidduchim. People say, oh, Rabbi, this guy prays in your shul. What's his deal? I want to, my daughter wants to go out with him. What's he like? Was he a good guy? Rabbi, I can't. I'm not in the city. I'm relying on you. Tell me, is this a good guy for my daughter? You know what I say to them? He turns pages nicely. I see him, he sits in the Beit Knesset, looks like he's praying nicely. What the heck do I know? Most people, when you ask them a question about shidduchim, what do they say? Oh, yeah, wonderful midot, this, that. What do you know? It's not a game. The reason why this person is calling you is because their daughter or their son is going to be tied to this person forever. How are you going to lie like that? If you don't know, what should you say? I don't know. Or, this is what I know. I don't know anything else. See, we have best of intentions. I don't want to, mess this guy up. So, what? So to not mess him up, you're going to mess me up? But how does that start? It starts because you tell a little lie. And a little lie becomes a big lie. A person needs to learn to train themselves to be super specific about emet. And when a person lives that way, then everything changes completely for them. My friends, I want to give you an example about a rabbi, a tremendous Torah scholar who was incredibly careful about emet. His name was Rabbi Raphael, and he lived in the city of Bereshit. Anyway, he was very careful. There was never a time that he ever said anything that was untrue. And he used to teach his students also to be incredibly particular about the truth. Anyway, one day, just an example, he asked the student to go check. He wanted to know if it was raining outside, if he needs to wear his raincoat when he goes to the Beit Knesset. And the student comes back in, and the student says, "It's raining now." The rabbi is very upset. The student said, "Rabbi, is everything okay? You look upset, you look bothered." The rabbi looks at the student and says, "I don't understand. How could you say it's raining now?" The student says, "What do you mean? I just went outside to check for you, like you asked me to." He says, "So you should say, when I went outside, it was raining. Do you know if from the time you went outside to the front yard of my house till you came back here that it's still raining? How could you possibly say it's raining now? You're saying something you don't know if it's emet." And now, to me, to you, that sounds insane. Doesn't it? Now, the rabbi is going to wear his coat based on the information that it was raining 1.5 seconds ago. But how long does it take to start raining or to stop raining? A second. Sometimes you're outside, all of a sudden it just starts raining. It doesn't warm up slowly. Sometimes it just starts raining. So he said to his student, even if I'm going to wear my raincoat, because it might be raining now, because you checked a second ago, and it was raining. You could never say the words, "It's raining now," if you don't know. My friends, how careful we have to be. You have a guy, I know this guy for 50 years. Don't do business with him. The guy was stealing when we were kids. That means he's stealing now, aside from the Lashon Hara. How many times, in the financial markets, they used to end off every commercial that was for financial products. I don't know if you remember this. They would always say, "Past performance is not indicative of future results. Children, please ask your parents before investing with Morgan Stanley," etc., etc. You must be 18 years or older? Okay, fine. Right? Past performance is not indicative of future results. Could you imagine someone said, "This guy, don't do business with him." I mean, last I checked, the guy poops in his pants. Last you checked, the last time I met him, he was a baby. He's probably grown out of that. I'm just going to wager. Right? How about any other behavior that you used to know? Maybe he's grown out of that. Maybe he's done teshuvah. Now, a person could say something, depending on the right way. Maybe, I'm not sure, look into, check out, make sure. But to say that I know, you know that as of now? Rabbi Raphael was chastising his student for saying it's raining now when the guy just went outside to check. How about when our information is 5 years old, 5 months old, 5 weeks old, 5 minutes old? Is it true now? You don't know. But we like to be in control information. Listen, people, trust me. Trust me. We like to feel that we know this. So sometimes what do? We start embellishing and we add. But each one of those parts is a lie. The Chachamim were always very careful when they spoke to their children. Most parents, when they talk to their children, so they tell the child, if you go to sleep now, you get a surprise in the morning. Kid wakes up, ready for his surprise. Why'd you tell him that? Because you were desperate for them to go to sleep. Yeah. If they didn't get a surprise in the morning, what happens? The kid learned from his daddy that you could promise and not deliver. That's what you just taught your kid. If you finish your homework, if you go to your Torah class, I'm going to buy you an X. And then you don't buy him an X. What does the kid learn? He didn't learn the Gemara class from the stranger who was tutoring him. He learned from his father that you could promise and not deliver, you could lie. My friends, this concept, the adherence to sheker, is so important. I want to end with this. This Rabbi Raphael, who was so careful with his student, It wasn't that he was careful with other people. He was careful with himself. He made sure never to exaggerate, never to lie, never to say something he didn't know. And I want to share with you an insane story about Rabbi Raphael and what that will end. There was a Jew in the local town who unfortunately did something maybe that wasn't so honest. Anyway, the government caught him, and at that time, they didn't give you a fine or send you to prison in Otisville. Yeah, what did they do? They killed you. Chopped off your arm if you stole, right? That's what it used to be. So anyway, they tell this guy, listen, this is what we suspect you of doing. We don't believe your pleas of innocence. If you'll find the two rabbis in this town, the two rabbis in the town at the time that were very famous was Rabbi Moshe Misavaran and this Rabbi Raphael Mibashid, if the two of them will come into court and be character witnesses and swear that you're innocent, then we'll let you go, and you won't be killed. They first go to this Rabbi Moshe. Rabbi Moshe says right away, Pikuach nefesh. Of course you have to lie. No problem, I'm in. To save a life? Of course, that's the halakha. They come to Rabbi Raphael, and they tell Rabbi Raphael, we need you to swear that he's innocent. And the rabbi can't believe what they're asking of him. He's never told a lie in his whole life. This is his thing. Anyway, the court cases, he says, I don't know how I could do this. Anyway, the court case is getting closer and closer. The mother, the children, they're coming, they're crying to him. And the rabbi, he wants to help, but he can't fathom saying a lie. Anyway, the night before the court case, the rabbi stays up the entire night and he prays to Borei Olam, please God, take my neshama so that I am not forced to make this decision. To lie for the first time ever, even though it's the right thing to do for this person, but how could I bring myself to do that? I'd rather not be alive than transgress this mitzvah that I've never broken in my life. And in the nighttime, before the court case, Rabbi Raphael Mibashid returned his soul to his maker. He passed away. And he didn't tell the lie. Hashem gave him what he prayed for. The court the next morning, Rabbi Raphael passed away. So they said, no problem, we'll accept the shivua only of the other rabbi. But this is the extent that the great Rabbanim, the great leaders of our people were careful with their words. And I say this all the time. People sometimes say to me, Rabbi, I hear what you're saying, but in my business, if you're not willing to lie, when everyone else is lying, it's impossible. You can't do business without saying that you have another deal on the table. There's another interested buyer. If you don't want it, you want to get the guy to either up his bid or close the deal. You're using a lie to close the deal. Right? The guy says, how much is it worth? You tell him, $1 million over the value. So then he comes back, you want $500,000 more. You think it's worth $500,000 more than he's offering. But you know you're not going to get him to $500,000 more. So what do you tell him? It's worth $1 million more. And then you'll settle on $500,000. So really, I'm ending up at the truth. But I had to take a short detour at a sheker drive-through. If that's your business, if that's where you live, move. Because a lie that starts small, it grows big. And it grows to other places. And if you lie at work, I promise you, you will be unable to keep up the Great Wall of China. In financial firms, they have this concept that on the one side they're a financial institution, on the other side they help people with financial planning. Now that's illegal, right? Because you can't at the same time be representing the companies and also be representing the people that are buying from the companies. It's a conflict of interest. You have information from the inside because you sat in the meeting with that company, and now you have a guy who's trying to invest in that company, and you know that you should tell him either to sell or to buy. So at least officially, there's a wall between those two parts of a company like Deloitte. A company like Goldman Sachs. Because if there's that conversation happens, right? That's insider trading. Right? That's how it works. But who's to stop the guy who was in that meeting with this client at the bar having a drink from saying to the guy, I'm not telling you anything. All I'm saying is, apple. Can I have an apple cobbler? I'll have an apple martini to go with it. And if you could get me the applewood smoked chicken, that would be fantastic. You got me? I promise you, there are times in these companies where stuff is leaked. No question in my mind. The question is if they're caught, if someone finds what they said, how subtle were they in the way that they said it. But if you lie, no wall is great enough to stop you from lying on the other side of the wall. And that's why, of all the mitzvot in the Torah said, midvar sheker tirchak. You know why? Because by every other mitzvah, the Chachamim said, asu sayag la Torah. Build a wall around the Avera. But what we're learning over here is that the Torah had to tell you to stay so far away. You know why? Because a wall won't help. And if you're lying at work, you'll lie at home. And if you lie to your clients, you'll lie to your friends. If you lie to your friends, you'll lie to your family. As Rav taught his son about something as stupid as beans. You say fool to get adashim. You said 1,000,000 to get 500,000. Limdu lishonam daber sheker. You taught your tongues how to speak falsehood. And you know what happens? Like every other muscle in your body, there's something called muscle memory. Your body remembers how to do that motion, how to punch, how to walk, how to kick, how to hop, how to ride a bicycle. That way, even if you forget, you could just pop back on. It's like riding a bike. Your tongue also has muscle memory. Limdu lishonam daber sheker. Hashem should bless us to live lives of truth. And when a person lives a life of truth, as we said earlier, they're close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Midvar sheker tirchak. But if a person's a person of emet, they come close to God. And that's why I think it says, Karov Adonai lechol korav. God is close to all those who call out to Him. Lechol asher yikreuhu be'emet. If you call out to Him, not be'emet, that you call out to Him truthfully. But if you're a person of truth, then you're not on the 4th floor, the 5th floor, the 77th floor. God! Where's my health? Where's my parnasah? Where's my shidduchim? Karov Adonai lechol korav. לכל שיקראוהו באמת. ברוך ה' לעולם.